Hey guys, thanks so much for joining us for this episode of the Gospel of Two Wheels, number 43. We're going to be talking about Rekluse Clutches, auto and manual. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you do, like it, share it, subscribe to the channel. Really means a lot. If you're listening to this on the podcast, awesome. Definitely subscribe to the podcast. You'll get this update every time we post one. Thanks, guys. Hey everybody, good morning. It's Morgan coming to you live from the Highland Cycles studio for the Gospel of Two Wheels number 43. Today we're going to be talking about Rekluse Clutches, both auto and manual. Yes, they make both. Garrett Anderson, tell Tori I need a Rekluse. Seems to work. Oh yeah, absolutely, it does work when I do it. Actually. Anybody out there watching, if you want either suspension work, a new bike, new parts, new cool stuff, give me your girlfriend/wife's phone number. I'll get a hold of them and I'll make it happen. Ask Garrett Anderson. You guys can see I'm wearing my Jimmy Lewis Super Duper Dirt Bike Test hat because he wore his Highland Cycles actual hat on his Taco Tuesday Tech. Anyway. His live show that's super awesome happens on Tuesday evenings from Pahrump, Nevada. He was cool enough to wear the hat I sent him. Jimmy, if you watch this, I need a real hat. So glad to be here. So glad to be in Montrose. So glad that there are dirt bikes in the world. So let's talk about Rekluse. Rekluse is a U.S. company in Idaho, and they are awesome. That's the first thing I want to say. I love the company of Rekluse. They are great guys. Idaho Joe, Patrick Crowthour, all those guys are really great. They're a U.S. company. I love them. So Rekluse Auto Clutches bring up a very spirited discussion most of the time. And for good reason, because some people, old school guys, are like, it's cheating, I don't want to... Anyway, it goes back and forth. You guys, definitely, any questions you have, send them to me, type them in right now, let me know. If you're watching on YouTube later, put your questions in the comments. I will get to every one of them, I promise you, even if they're ridiculous. So, send me questions. Let's talk real fast, before we get into the should you not... By the way, it's a personal question. Let's talk about how they work, okay? So this is the Rekluse. This is what does the heavy lifting for a Rekluse auto clutch. This is the EXP ring. And it's not a complete one, you can see, because this is stuff I have at the shop. These are actually replacement parts. But basically what an auto clutch from Rekluse does is when installed, it holds the pressure plate on the clutch out just a little bit. This is an exaggeration, everybody, so don't yell at me. It holds the pressure plate out a little bit, and then as the clutch spins, or the motor spins, the clutch spins, this turns faster and faster, and there's weights that go inside here, right? So weights go inside there, and those weights swing out with centripetal force, and they make this expand. That's the EXP part, expand. So they make that expand, takes up that gap in the pressure plate that's held out, engages the clutch, and away you go. So that's how they work. Okay, I'm installing one tomorrow. Are you installing one on the EN? Dave Polson, the only thing keeping me from Rekluse is the $1,000 price tag. Fair enough. They do have lesser expensive versions. So, Ryan, this is the first question that I really want to answer. Ryan Gerardi says, is it worth having the engine brake and not being able to push the start? So I think what he means is it worth losing your engine braking capabilities and not being able to bump start? Great question. First part is you don't completely lose engine braking, okay? If you're riding normally and you're going up a hill and you come over the top of a hill and you go back down the other side of the hill and you don't bring the bike all the way to an idle, you don't lose your engine braking. So as long as the bike doesn't come down to an idle and this disengage, you don't lose your engine braking. So if you come up over a big hill out in our desert where there's huge, big, steep hills, and you don't stomp the rear brake and bring the motor down to an idle, then you still have engine braking. It's like, it works just fine. Now, if you pull up to the top of a hill, you stop, and then you roll off, and you don't give it gas, it's going to freewheel. My personal opinion is that you shouldn't be using the engine braking that much anyway, and you should be working on your brake control. That's a personal opinion. Jim Wells says the other thing is you blip the throttle. Absolutely. As you come off the thing, if you are freewheeling, bump the throttle, thing lights up. Roger Hurd says, how would it be on a 125? They work great on small bore two-strokes. I like them better on four-strokes personally. I don't have a problem with stalling two-strokes so often. So, especially the new motored KTM ones, they're kind of magical engines. Sorry, coffee, guys. I've been up since 4:30 working on our YouTube stuff. So, hey, everybody here watching, go subscribe to our YouTube channel. Really appreciate it if you haven't done it already. It means a lot. Do it. It's awesome. We put up really cool stuff, I think. Product reviews, instructional videos, ride videos. These all end up on YouTube, so do that. So, to get to Roger's question on the 125, I don't know that I would like it so much. But I know there's guys out there. If anybody has run one on a 125, chime in. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. So let's talk real quickly about, first of all, let's mention the fact that Rekluse does not only make auto clutches, they make really, really nice manual clutches. And actually the only Rekluse that I'm running in one of my own personal motorcycles is a manual clutch, torque drive manual clutch in my YZ250 two-stroke. That's because YZ clutches aren't the best, the parts. I mean, they work fine when they're new, but they're not the best quality parts. And since that bike, old Jolene, is awfully old and hammered, she needs she needs some love on the clutch, so I replaced it with a Rekluse, and it's all good. It works really good. So anyway, their torque drive manual clutches are amazing. If you need a clutch, if you worn out basket, inner hub, things like that, and you want a really high end, really good clutch, I highly recommend the Rekluse over Henson or any of those others. It's really good. Tim Richardson says, on my TE 300 two-stroke, I still have the ability to bump start. Where did the no bump start myth come from? Tim, so it's funny. Some people's bikes still bump start. I would argue that really the only ones that'll still bump start with the Rekluse without doing any adjusting are two-strokes, because there's still a little bit of drag always with the Rekluse, and if your motor's tuned up and running good, you can they'll start up. On a four-stroke, they won't. Four-strokes have a hard time bump starting anyway with all the compression, but so they can be tough to bump start. The thing about European bikes with hydraulic clutches, on the Rekluse, you end up with a new slave cylinder, and the new slave cylinder has an adjustment on it, and you can back that out, basically make the clutch like a manual, bump start it, and then turn that in and be good to go. So it's not really a huge problem. It would be a big problem on a cable operated bike because you have to get in there and adjust things, and anyway, it can be kind of a pain. Steve Baldwin, right hand downhill switchback can be tricky. Rear brake on left handlebar is magic. Yes, that is another massive upside to a Rekluse and having a left hand brake. Basically, it's a bicycle style master cylinder, goes on your left hand handlebar from Rekluse, ties into your brake master cylinder down on the frame. You can get on that rear brake with your feet on the pegs, put your right foot out to go downhill, right hand switchbacks. It's super awesome. Another option, actually an option I like better than the Rekluse handbrake if you're going to use it, is the aux brake. It's less money, and I like the way it works better. honestly. It's a cable operated deal, super duper easy to install. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to put the link in the description for the aux brake. It's super rad. We'll also have the link in the description for anything Rekluse oriented. Chris, Dylan, what's happening? How is a Moto Minded going, man? Javier says, with the Radius CX, you run them in the tight side, pull the clutch when you stop. Absolutely, Javier. That's something that a lot of people don't really totally understand or think about if they're super anti-Rekluse and they've never used one, is that in the current state of Rekluse, which is a huge difference from where they were back in the Z-Start Pro and before that, I mean, they're a much better product now. There's a ton of adjustment. So you can really fine-tune the thing and make it work for you. Tim Richardson says, aux brake is awesome for left-hand rear brake. I agree. Shane McNabb, my daughter runs one on a KTM 105 and loves it. Absolutely. Let's see. Torben Sorensen says, I think for stall-prone four-strokes when hot in tight canyon or something like that, they're great. My biggest hang-up, personally, is the engagement point is too vague, and when I zap a big log of rock, I can't feel where the point is. That right there, folks, was a very well put statement, and the reason that I don't run a Rekluse on my two-strokes. I don't like the vague feeling of the clutch. Now, with Javier's recommendation of running a little on the tight side, that's going to go away a little bit. But because it slips, because you're waiting for the weights to swing, there's just a fraction of a second delay in the bite on the clutch. When you let that clutch out, there's just a tiny little delay. So it's not a big deal for most people. 9 out of 10 people, whatever. And honestly, it's probably not a big deal for me. I'm not a good enough rider to really honestly know. I mean, you guys have seen my videos. I'm not the best rider. Wow, I'm super far from the best rider, but I don't know. It's a mental thing. That, and with the new KTM motors, they are brilliant and they don't like stalling anyway. So I save $1,000. That being said, I am seriously considering putting one on our YZ450 rental bike because that bike does like to stall. Because it's a giant 450 that's tried to be as light as possible. So there's a ton of compression, not much rotating mass because they're trying to lighten everything up, and they stall when they get low, so like low in the RPM. Chris Drake Sr. says, just installed a Radius CX on my 300RR. Insta smiles. That's awesome. And I guess I want to the point I want to make about all this as we go forward discussing this thing is that your dirt bike is your dirt bike, and the way you ride your dirt bike is the way you ride your dirt bike. And if you like things like auto clutches and left-hand brakes and all that, I am all for it. I might give you a hard time about it at some point. That may happen, especially when I'm struggling and you're like going up a hill, no problem. But who cares what anybody says, right? Do what makes your ride the most comfortable and enjoyable for you. If you like the challenge of having a manual clutch, use a manual clutch. If you like that initial bite being right on the money, use a manual clutch. If you get tired and you just want to twist the throttle and go up a hill, rocky hill, without having to worry about the clutch, get a Rekluse, an auto Rekluse. So yeah. Geneva says, good info. I keep getting advised to put on my X-Trainer. Geneva, I would highly recommend riding a bike with one just to make sure if you can. If you are a more recreational rider who just wants that little bit of an advantage and save the arm pump and the tiredness from your left hand, I say do it 100%. When the first Rekluse come up, we play a lot with tungsten heavy balls. This is Javier. Now you can run heavy wedges, light springs, and the feeling is almost stock clutch. Absolutely, 100%. Barap, Paul Altamir, Chris Thomas, what's happening, Joe Hawkins. So yeah, Rekluses are awesome. there are some downsides. We already talked about the little bit vague clutch feel. Javier talked about how to fix that. I completely agree with all of those comments. Let me give you a little story, though. Some friends of ours, Steve Dinas and Eric Roten, went to Romaniacs a few years ago, and they raced the gold class. They're bad dudes, and they're amazing riders. And Eric, I asked them both if they're going to take Recluses. They both had Recluses, like, with them, took them to put in their rental bikes, rode around a little bit before the race, and then decided against it. And here's the reason. In the really, 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 really gnarly stuff, which not a lot of us ride, let's be honest. I mean, if we like hard stuff, we don't really know what Romaniacs is like, especially the gold class, but some of us do. Eric said that he wouldn't have run a Rekluse for any money, even if they'd paid him, because an auto Rekluse, excuse me, not the manual, but an auto, because there were times like going up hills and you lose momentum or whatever, and he was so happy to be able to like let the clutch out and have the bike stop and not roll backwards. And then same thing going downhill, like super gnarly, sketchy, steep stuff, and be able to let the clutch out and like have the thing stop and not just roll off the hill. So, and just kill the bike, let it like, oh God, it's so gnarly, heinous. So there's that. Recluses are kind of like, so this is again, personal opinion. And by the way, this is definitely not sponsored by Rekluse or Dirt Bike Test. Jimmy, come on. First of all, Matt Larson, John McDaniel, how's it going? So Recluses are kind of like flex bars and a bunch of other things that make you more comfortable, right? No one needs a Rekluse. No one needs flex bars. No one needs a dirt bike except for my mental state needs a dirt bike. But my biggest thing is with a Rekluse, when you get tired and you're old like me, and you're going into this, another giant rock garden on Timberline Trail up outside of Taylor Park, and you just don't have the strength to pull the clutch in and feather it and keep the motor in the right RPM range and all that stuff, it's magical because it does all the work for you. It's brilliant. That is when they shine. Another time that they shine is if you're racing Endurocross. Is buying it or running it? I don't know. But anyway, you're racing an Endurocross race where you only get 5 or 6 laps anyway. And the tiniest mistake or stall could like ruin the race. That's not acceptable, especially on the pro level when you're trying to qualify for the main, things like that. The Rekluse is an absolute necessity. Eric Roten, again, super duper local rad guy who didn't run one in Romaniacs, does run one when he races Endurocross. So they're awesome. I mean, they're amazing pieces of machinery. I don't run one, but I am thinking about putting one on the 450 because that thing does like to stall. Chris Drake, personal opinion. Learn how to ride properly with a good manual clutch first. I think it's going to help one learn how to ride a bike better and learn to get over obstacles. When ready, get the Rekluse and everything will be that much easier, and the Rekluse will be another tool in the bag rather than a crutch. Chris Drake, I could not have said that better, period. That is my absolute 100% belief. You have to learn how to ride a bike with a clutch. Okay? You don't have to, I guess, with the Rekluse. But in my opinion, if you really want to be a good rider, you've got to use one. I feel like Rekluses, if put on bikes of super duper beginners, it elevates their riding initially, but it's a glass ceiling that you bump right into pretty quickly because you use it as a crutch. You don't really know how to feather the clutch and get wheelie over things and whatever. So I completely agree with Chris. So here's a quick story about a kid that we work with at the shop. Anyway, kid's a great rider, a very talented athlete in every way, and he was on an 85, and he was struggling a little bit to do some really hard trails, and his dad who had a Rekluse, decided he wanted to get his kid a Rekluse because it would help him out. I told him, don't do it. And he said, well, and this is a guy who's going to buy the clutch from me and have me install it and do the whole thing, right? So, like, I'm losing money by saying don't do it. And I said, don't do it. He needs to learn how to use the clutch. And then later, he can do it whatever you want, Anyway, he's got to learn, though. He's got to learn. Well, I lost the sale. He bought the clutch. He did bring it to me to install it, so that was cool. I put it in. The kid rode it. The kid moved up. Anyway, ended up on a big bike that already had, they bought a used bike, already had a Rekluse in it, good to go, whatever, kid's riding. I saw him out on the trail, I don't know, months later, and I was talking to him, how's it going? Good. And the dad looks at me, he's like, man, I think about taking that Rekluse out of the kid's bike. He just doesn't know how to use the clutch. I said, I know, and I recommend taking it out of the bike because I think you've got to learn how to use the bike first, and then you can do the Rekluse. Again, that is my personal opinion. Does not, you guys do your own thing. Rekluse auto clutches are an amazing tool that can really help out in some really gnarly situations. It can do a bunch of work for you. I just don't think beginners really should have them. That's my personal opinion. It really puts a limit on how good you can get with the clutch. If you're a beginner and you have one and you love it, that's awesome. I just want you riding, really. I mean, the important part is that you go ride your dirt bike, right? So that's what I really want to see. While the Rekluse is good at doing the work for you, it's not as good as this. This up here and all the muscles and nerves and things like that, connecting them, are infinitely better than some weights and ramps. I'm just going to say that. Like, they're a million times better. So once you train them and get used to it, right? So it takes a little while. Coffee is good this morning. Is everybody, like, I know this is completely off topic, but give me a thumbs up if you are a coffee drinker, or a thumbs down if you're not a coffee drinker. If you're not a coffee drinker, though, like, come on, really? Actually, some of my best friends don't drink coffee, and it's weird to me. If you guys are watching this, hit the thumbs up button for us. We love it. Rekluse adds heat. Torben, thank you. I'm glad you drink coffee. That's awesome. Rekluse does add heat 100%. Any clutch work adds heat, right? So if you've ever watched Dust to Glory, then you'll see that Mouse McCoy has written on the back of his handguard says, stay off the clutch. That's because it adds heat. Clutches add heat. The more you do this and the more friction you create in the motor, the more heat. Rekluses add friction kind of all the time. Not all the time, but like a lot more, because it's micro feathering all the time. Chad Hucko, great, this is good. Wife and I love our Rekluses. Might keep me from ever being a great rider, but also keeps me being an okay rider and adds to the enjoyment. Awesome. That is another perfectly put comment, people. I love it. Chad, that's awesome, dude. If your goal isn't to be able to wheelie like Graham Jarvis or get the perfect splatter off the rock or whatever, then yeah, Rekluse is awesome. And so, and I've ridden with Chad and his wife. They ride great. The Rekluse is awesome for them, so I'm all for it. I used to make a lot more fun of people who used Rekluses because back when they first came out and the Z-Start Pros and stuff like that, I could not stand the way the clutch felt. It was absolutely horrid. I think a lot of people's opinions on here, if you're over 30, well, if you're over 35 and you've been riding a long time, a lot of people's opinions come from those old days of Rekluses because they were seriously cruddy to use. I mean, they work great on a big bore 4-stroke, and all you want to do is burr, 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 up the hill. They were fine. But if you wanted any clutch control at all, they were terrible. Guys, first of all, thank you all so much for watching. We had a great engagement today. Makes me happy in my little black soul. So thank you so much. I knew the Rekluse discussion would be good. Thank you guys, by the way, for keeping it positive. Really appreciate that. I know that can go different ways, and I know we all like to joke and stuff like that, and I'm very thankful for you guys joking and having fun. But thanks for keeping it positive. It's awesome. Guys who are still watching, we're still looking for cool stuff to put on the wall. We got lots more room and stuff like that to put in here. I really want to decorate this place up. If you guys have any cool stuff, either of yours or stuff that you want to donate and you want to see on the show, send it to me. I'll put our address link in the description of this and on the YouTube channel. But our address is 5068-A North Townsend, Montrose, Colorado 81401. So yeah, if you want to send stuff, I mean, like I said, I'm not asking for like fancy expensive stuff, but like old number plates, things like that. If you guys want it up on the wall, let me know. I'd love to put it up. Paula Turner just bought a 2009 200 with a Rekluse. Sometimes it stalls going down hills. Probably the adjustment is off. Paula, you need to check on that. It also depends, does it have the adjustable slave cylinder on it? There's a lot of variables there, because being an 09, that's before they all came with the adjustable slave cylinder on the European bikes. Actually, my employee Zach had a non-adjustable slave cylinder Rekluse on his 300, and it actually stalled all the time. And it turned. We peeled the thing apart. Turns out the clutch was just junk. So he's actually going back to a manual because he doesn't really like the Rekluse. So Paula, take it apart. Probably either an adjustment or maybe some worn out parts. Guys, I'm gonna head out. I gotta get to work. I got a ton of work to do. Thank you all so very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Punk Rock Club, thanks for sticking into the end. Give us a rock and roll sign if you watch this all the way to the end. It means a lot to me. It really, really means a lot to me. Yeah, again, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, go subscribe. Do it. Trust me, it's awesome. I think it's the best out there. That's, of course, my opinion. Yeah, guys, thank you so much. Spread happiness in the world today. No negativity. Throw that out the window. Get out there, spread peace, love, happiness. Be energetic and excited about your dirt bikes. And most of all, seriously, down deep in my little black soul, I hope you get out and ride your dirt bikes!